the old school Chronic, the original.
The original.
The original was a great foundation. Outstanding foundation. Something so great that you could build a house on, like Chronic 2001, and perfect that Chronic.
Okay, so we're talking about perfect, huh?
We're talking about perfect. We're talking about coming in, you know, starting off an album with a little bit of Still Dre all day. Because you can't tell me that ain't one of the most iconic songs ever coming in here.
That song was, you know what? That song was great. At the same time, it was just, I don't know, it was just too simple to me in a way. I mean, it took me some time to even get used to just hearing that. I was just like, is this Dre? Is this Dr. Dre? Is this the one that I know
is this
that
Mr.
like,
NWA?
made yeah, man. I'm just saying, it's just like, is this the same guy, you know, that made just like these riding hits like Let Me Ride and Dre Day and Ain't Nothing But a G Thing. You know what I mean?
I mean, but he then came in with the next episode, right?
Okay, and like even like the next episode, even that right there, it's just like when you're breaking down this album, it's just like the next episode. I even heard, you know, the original, you know, and like the original beat to that. It's just like he didn't do much with it. Like he didn't do much. It was just like these little bitty sprinkles, and then I'm like, none of that was his. It's just like it just. I mean, it's like a lot of stuff on the album, and it's just like, looks a great album. It is a great album, and it's just like it took me a while to get used to it. And I'm just saying, it's just like it just felt like things on the album were just way too simple for Dr. Dre's standards.
I could see what you're saying, but I'm still sticking with even the Buzz fam over here got us with the vote talking about Chronic 2001 is the premier Chronic. Oh, and I'm just saying this, and I get it. Because we out here talking about 90s versus 2000s, right? And we starting it off with the Chronic. So if you guys are new to the channel, welcome to the Buzz fam. Yep. We're doing Behind the Bars, where we sit down and we talk about some of the things that we talk about off camera outside of our reactions. Yes. The full video is already live on the Patreon, so go check that out if you want. And the full reaction is going to be over there, the full full Behind the Bars episode. You'll get a preview here on YouTube. But yeah, we talking about that Chronic, and we talking about 2000s versus the 90s today.
Yes, we are. So you know what? We could get into the foundation, like the foundation Chronic, right?
Your foundation Chronic was great.
Yeah. And we're talking about live instrumentals. Like we're talking about, you know, live instrumentation. We're talking about, you know, something that was structured, just put together like piece by piece. It's just like those instrumentals, like what Dre did with those instrumentals on that Foundation album.
Yep.
You know, it was just, I mean, like, it was just like beyond his time. It was just like this new thing in hip hop that nobody have even, I'm like, they never even heard of, though, you know, like a lot of people were even trying to duplicate that because it was so great. And then we fast forward to the Chronic 2001. Which was made at the end of '99, but we're not going to say anything like that. No.
It was like in November when it got dropped, so it was basically got its prime in the 2000s.
Yes. Now I could say, you know what, and it's just like I just hope that people don't take this as a diss because like it's real, you know, because like it really is not. There's other producers out there, Pete Rock, Buck Wild, Lord Finesse.
Yep.
These were 90s producers, right? Now, it's just like Dr. Dre, it just felt like, it just felt like the beats on there, just like the selection was just like he was kind of like taking like leftovers from what Pete Rock and what Buck Wild, you know, had, and like what Lord Finesse had, though, and putting it together on this album. It just felt like there wasn't much trying.
But see, this makes me feel like your critique of 2001 has more to do with you wanted Dre to still sound like the old Dre, and you are upset that he was taking pieces from somebody else as opposed to making his own thing, more than it was a lesser album than the other one. It just wasn't his album as much as you would have liked it to be.
Now I would say this: I'm all about evolving. I'm all about that because those are my favorite artists. Like those are my favorite types of artists. Like I love going into an album not knowing what to expect. However, it was just, I wanted Dre to come out with something different, but I wanted him to. I just wanted it to be better. I guess in a way, I just wanted it to be a lot better. I just didn't. I'm just saying. It's just like it sounded like leftover stuff from the '90s. That's what that album sounded like. It's just like if you're like going into the 2000s, I wanted, like some type of like just like some type of like evolution with the sound.
Yeah.
Because like during that time, you have the Swiss beats, coming through around that time, and like other producers like the Just Blazes and stuff like that. So it's just like, and then also Manny Fresh too and everything. So it's just like, with Dr. Dre coming out with like what he did, it's just like I just kind of felt like he was like behind the power curve a little bit, though.
I could see where you're going with that a little bit.
That's where I'm going with that.
But at the same time, you get like songs like "Forgot About Dre" on there, right? And like letting Eminem start to blow up and start to take over and like branch off and I don't know. I just feel like what they were able to do in like just a classic after classic after classic song that comes off of 2001. Like, I totally get it. Like the original Chronic coming out and like just dropping some bangers in there, right? And like doing something totally new. But again, like so many people replay Chronic 2001. And when it dropped, like what was like 7 years, something like that after the original Chronic, people went crazy for that thing. And it was like, I don't personally know anybody that thinks it was a miss you don't think it's a miss, but you think it was not as good as the original. I don't know anybody that thinks it's not as good as the original.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say this. There was, just like people were gravitating towards 2001. It was the same exact story with the Chronic. It was just like nobody was playing nothing else but the Chronic. The Chronic was
it was
the album. It was like the album. And it's just like everybody was playing nothing but that. Yeah. And you know what, man? And it's like you still had all the hits off of there too. Like you had all of like the really big hits that everybody was singing, playing, or just like whatever, And just like, hey, Forgot About Dre, right? Like I remember seeing the MTV Music Award, 99, right? Yeah. And I remember when Dre and Eminem were on there. I remember like when Nothing But the G Thing came on and the crowd went crazy.
Yes.
Why didn't they go crazy over, Still Dre Day, AK, like when that song came on. But like when G Thing came in,
yeah, because it was,
and we're gonna go on the one. I mean,
yeah, but but at that time you're talking about like one song just came out and one was already a classic. If you did that today, I guarantee you everybody going crazy for Forgot About Dre or Still Dre or whatever. Like they're going crazy no matter
and everybody
what.
Going crazy though, for Nothing But the G Thing as well.
That is true. That is true. Ain't nothing but a G thing. But I feel like there's like zero skips on the 2001. Like it is just money after money.
It was. It took a lot. It took a lot for me to get used to. But like there are like quite a few songs on there that I
you
could
don't listen
just,
to a bunch.
That I could just. Yeah, it was just like quite a few. And I remember, and even with the Forgot About Dre, even with that beat, for example. All right, Timberland was coming out with certain beats at a certain time, right? I remember just kind of just like the way that beat Forgot About Dre was like put together. It even sounded like leftover work from Timberland. And I'm saying it's just like it just. But see, Eminem's verse was dope.
But this doesn't mean that it wasn't. It's not better. It just means that it's not his. Yeah, like that's not really the same thing, right? Like if you're talking about like which Chronic is better or which like genre is better, like 2000s versus 90s kind of thing is better.
All right, so we could talk about what's better, like in regard to those eras, though.
Well, I mean, it's easy. It's almost the same argument at this point because like y'all set the foundation with the 90s and it was a phenomenal foundation. Yeah. Right? Because like we got the 80s and the 70s, right? Like getting things together and figuring things out and developing sounds and coming and doing all this stuff. And I really feel like it hit its stride in the 90s, right? Yeah. You got like Pac and Nas and Snoop and NWA and Dre and like, right? And it's crazy. And like all these different elements and different sounds and everything kind of come together. But then like I feel like it really locks in the 2000s.
Yeah, man. And I'm gonna give this to y'all. Like y'all have like the catchy vibes. I'm catchy vibes. You know what? No, I just think that a lot of the rappers in the 2000s, like they did take from the foundation, but then they were able to create, you know, these catchier vibes and stuff like that, though. You know what I mean?
We built a
like
house that you want to live in.
Like
you want to live with that 2000s era music.
You want to live with that, though. You know, like you do want to live with that. However, I would say this though. You know.
Nobody wants to live on a foundation court. They want to live in the house.
Nah. No, I'm saying this though, like the 90s built a big house too. Like they built a big house. But I would say, I mean, like listening to songs from the 2000s compared to like the 90s, I feel a lot of the songs in the 2000s, though, catchy and everything like that, right?
Yep.
They were dated, and I felt like the ones in the 90s were more timeless. In a way,
more timeless.
Yes, and I could say this though, and I could use some examples. All right, there's probably like lots of commercials, lots of movies that I've watched, lots of shows that I've watched of late, right? And I would hear stuff like all right, I would hear the Humpty Dance. I would hear Souls of Mischiefs.
Yeah.
You know, like 93 until Infinity.
Yeah.
I would hear Rex and the Fix. I would hear Black Sheep's Choice is Yours. You could get with this, you could get with that. I would hear Tribe Called Quest's Can I Kick It on a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie. I would hear, I mean, it's just like the classic stuff, you know. I would hear Old Dirty Bastards, Shimmy Shimmy Ya, Knock, you know, like I'm Knocked Up and stuff like that. But I'm just saying, it's just like, there's like a lot of, you know, timeless classics though, you know, that are still getting used like till this day. And I feel, you know, like the 2000, like I said again, lots of hits though, you know, but I don't know if like for some reason I feel it's kind of dated in a way, you know.
See, I don't know about that because like they be playing all kinds of 2000s hits coming in with anything coming out of any one of the Carters, Carter 2, Carter 3, the whole Carter mixtape era. Kanye, for sure, they're sampling Kanye out the wazoo. You can't even tell me that they're not talking about any of Eminem stuff coming in here, that you ain't getting some like throwback M coming in here from like 2000s, like early 2000s too, right? And for those of y'all, I'm talking to you, Mike, because I know you already hit me up in the comments about Eminem is a 90s rapper. Like, nah, Eminem is not a 90s rapper. He started out in the 90s, barely.
Well,
I mean, obviously he was underground rapping and doing all that kind of stuff, but like...
But I would say you know what? To Mike's argument though, I would say the Hi My Name Is was out in March of 99.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
but
that whole entire album.
You can break that whole album off and you still getting the LPs, you still getting the Eminem show.
But it's just like Eminem exploded like in 99 of How My Name Is, and then everything else just followed, obviously.
Yeah.
Like everything else followed.
Yeah, but you know. But when you're talking about like, you get Till I Collapse over here, and you get 8 Mile, and you get like, he got a Grammy, I think, and you coming in here, and you're doing like crazy, like when I'm saying like, the reason I think the 2000s is the best. One, we have 2 of the greatest rappers of all time in Eminem and Kanye West, like and in that era specifically. Same with Lil Wayne. You want to put him in there because that's when he was on his mixtape run. That's when he had the Carter 2, the Carter 3, greatest rapper alive, coming out with Young Money and like Young Moolah Baby and all them records. Signing Nicki Minaj, pulling up Drake. Like obviously Drake's bigger stuff is like more into like the late 2000s, early 2010s and stuff like that, right? But like even still, he pops into the scene right towards the end of it. And so you're looking at like, we're not even talking about Nelly or Fitty or Luda. We're not talking about the tail end of Andre 3000 and Outkast and Speaker Box coming in.
Well, I would say this though, like with Outkast, with Outkast, I wouldn't, you know what though, like Outkast like may be able to be faded into both parts. Like the reason why I would say that is because, you know, Outkast first blew in 94. Like I'm 100%. Play Your List of Cadillac Music, Players Ball, bam, that's all 94. Elevators,
Totally agree.
Elevators, AT Aliens, bam, 96.
Yep.
And then coming out with Rosa Parks, which was very popular. That was all 98.
Mm-hmm.
Jay-Z's Can I Get a What?
Can I get a what?
98.
Yeah, yep.
Rough Riders Anthem, 98. All right. Now we go to How Do You Want It?
Yeah, but
California Love, 96. Big Papa, 95. I'm saying like there's like lots of
there is a lot of that kind of
there,
stuff right there. But I'm gonna say when you coming in with Outkast's biggest song by far,
it's probably Hey Ya. That's probably one of the biggest songs.
No, I was gonna say Sorry Miss Jackson, which came out in 2000, and Hey Ya also. You're right.
Yeah,
Hey Ya came out like 05 somewhere
like
around
all
there.
that was off.
Stank on
I was
Ya.
like, yeah.
And you got B.O.B. and all this stuff coming in too. And so like I feel like you're right. Andre and Outkast, they were crushing it in the 90s, crushing it. But their best was the 2000s. It's like I said, like that foundation was set and they kept growing off of it. And their best music, M's best music, 2000s. Andre's best music and Outkast's best music and Speakerbox, 2000s. You getting Sorry Miss Jackson, you getting Hey Ya, you getting B.O.B.
I would say they had like the unpopular hits, like the Hey Ya was like a really big hit. Bombs Over Baghdad, Miss Jackson, really big hit. Though, like the Way That You Move, really big hit. But I'm saying like as far as like the albums go, like their first 3 albums were like arguably like their best albums. Like
sure,
the 2000s, like the 2000, yeah, like those hits, hits were like their best hits. I'm not gonna take anything away from that. Like those were their best hits, but their best albums were Southern Playalistic, Cloud Black Music, AT Aliens, and Aquemini. Those were their best albums.
That's probably true. I won't disagree with that, but I will still say that their best songs came out in the 2000s, and the 2000s era made the best music. Now, it might not have made the best classic albums of all time, although you can make some arguments with that because you got all of Kanye's that came out, right? Then you got Eminem's, Marshall Mathers LP, you got Eminem Show, and a few others that came out like during the 2000s, which were at 8 Mile, all those which were just absolutely like stratosphere level. Yeah. Like GOAT tier.
Yeah. So I could say definitely best hits 2000s, like arguably, though, I would say, Bodies of Work. Like I would say like the Bodies of Work piece, I have to give to the 90s. I have to give that to the 90s.
I just
like the
don't
Bodies
know.
of Work. I'm just sorry. Like
you got
like
College
the Bodies
Dropout,
of Work is different.
Late Registration.
Look, okay, so you got
Graduation.
Like It's Dark and Hell
808s.
Is Hot. You got Ready to Die. You got Me Against the World. You got All Eyes on Me. You have
That's true.
You have It Was Written by Nas. You have Illmatic. You have the 36 Chambers. Midnight Marauders, Tribe Called Quest. Low End Theory, Tribe Called Quest. Quick as a Name, DJ Quick. Ice Cube. Damn, like he got like a number. Shoot,
yeah.
like Predator. You got like Wicked, like all of those, from him too. Bone Thugs and Harmony coming out there.
Yeah, but then
you got Lauryn Hill's Miseducation.
Yeah, but then we're gonna start coming into where you can start talking about Luda and Nelly and 50, right? And Lil Wayne and like a bunch of these other ones that were coming out making these crazy albums that were just absolutely taking over the internet, right? And so like I feel like the 2000s was the last generation in which like the competition was so great when things sounded different than each other, right? Because like the way Nelly was rapping was way different than the way 50 was rapping, was way different than the way Luda was rapping, or M was rapping, or Lil Wayne was rapping, right? All of them were doing their own things, and all of them were still making crazy music. And I think that's one thing that sets both the 90s and the 2000s
and that's
apart.
What they have in common.
Yeah,
I think like the things that they have in common is like
they were
the
unique.
versatility.
Yeah.
But I would say like more so like with the 90s, like there was like the separations in sound. East Coast had the boom bap, the rugged hard jazz, type stuff. Down south, and in Hotlanta, like they had like the Cadillac, like the wah, just like the kind of just like that Cadillac type
spills,
of music right there.
Yeah, then you haven't even talked about T.I. coming in.
Houston, like Scarface and the Ghetto Boys, like they had like their nice cruising rhythms down there. West Coast had the P-Funk. They had you know, the synth, they had the live instrumentation, you know, so it was just like lots of different things that you were getting within the 90s though, you know, to like I'm compared to I don't know, I think kind of like in the you know in the 2000s, like they were like different like unique rappers and everything like that, man. I just think like the sounds started to kind of, you know,
meld together.
Yeah, and started like there wasn't any, you know, kind of like there isn't any different, you know, I mean, damn, like I'm using my train of thought, man, but it's just like
I know what you mean.
There wasn't like any differences.
I don't know that I would
after.
totally agree with that because I still felt like Luda had that like dirty South kind of sound. Same with T.I., right? And then if you went and looked at you talking about like Nelly coming out of St. Louis, like he definitely had a different flavor.
Now they had like their own thing.
They definitely had their own thing, right? And then Eminem obviously coming out of Detroit, like super different. 50, he was definitely on that East Coast kind of vibe, still coming out, like branching off of the foundation that like Nas and all them kind of like laid out, right? Like definitely had that kind of flavor as well. So like, I get what you're saying, but I don't know that it branched off that quickly. In the 2010s, totally agree, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because like, then you start getting into like more of like the popular rap and like you start getting into like some of the different stuff. Now I will say that the 2000s do have they were, as much as they were, I think were the greatest time, they were also, I feel like, the start of the decline and the start of the normalization to what it should sound like.
Yeah.
Because they started doing the snap dancing, right? And they all the different Dougies and this and that, and like all the kind of things, which were a lot of fun. And at that time, they were still putting in the work to make them like what they were, right? The T-Pains coming in here, like you doing like the two-step with the Laffy Taffies and all this kind of stuff, right? You're coming in with the Yin Yang Twins, and they're doing their kind of like unique kind of vibes, but they're still rapping and they're still doing like Petey Pablo, like, right? Like Freaky Leak and all this kind of stuff. They're still doing that stuff, but it started to lead into like, you got to be trendy more so than you needed to be putting out the next, like Till I Collapse or the next, like In the Club or like that kind of thing. Right.
Yeah, man. That's what I think it kind of like I'm happening towards the end, because I think like when it got kind of towards like the end of the 90s, I actually thought that things were moving along, like it was getting better though, because it's like we did have like the Swiss Beats, like the Dame Greases at the end of that. We had the Just Blazes coming out. We had the Timberlands. We had, you know, like Q-Tip. You know, we had, you know, like the J Dillas and stuff like that though. You know, so it was just like everything was moving into like a really good direction in like like in the 2000s, and then insert Kanye and, you know, and like a few more, you know, producers. And then from there, like, like after it was like the mid 2000s, it was kind of,
and that's kind of like what I think,
to go,
I think, you know, where it kind of got crazy, right? Is like, I feel like there's a few key artists in the 2000s that were like just on top of the world doing their thing, but they created that next generation, right? So Kanye is definitely one of them, right? Definitely. Where he took like what he was able to build, like this empire of like great different sounding productions, music and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, it had like that heavy bass, like, right? Like the 808s and like dum, 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 right? And it's got that kind of like feel and like vibe to where like people are like, okay, you start getting like it's more about the vibe than it is about like what you're saying. Right. And so that kind of comes out of that. Then you get the little Waynes where you got to sound a certain kind of way and you got to be on lean and you got to do this kind of thing. Right. But nobody was like rapping like Wayne was rapping, like coming out like after him. Right. Like there was some, but not really the same way. So it's like Wayne was doing that thing. That was his thing. Right. But he was also still barring out like crazy, doing all the mixtapes and the Carters and like all that kind of stuff. Right. So he was in like creating his own record label and bringing people on and launching careers like Nicki Minaj and like all that. Right. And Drake and everybody else. Right.
Yeah.
So he kind of created a pocket of a generation doing that same thing. And then you got like the T-Pains, right, coming in with their auto tunes and making it so popular and so much fun and doing all that kind of stuff. And those, like, I feel like those three kind of like melded together into like what the 2010 started to be, right? A lot of auto tunes, a lot of vibes, a lot of like drug using and that kind of stuff that we saw. Since we learned from like the channel, right? Like a lot of these artists that like lean and passing away too young and all this kind of stuff, right? But like that's why I think that 2000s though, I mean, all of them were like, because you can't say that any of them in the 2000s were that. They were all crushing it.
Yeah, and I'm like, everybody was crushing it though, because it's just like that formula. You know, it's like, okay, if I have like a little bit of this and like a little bit of that or whatever, you know, I could build this thing and bam. You know, people are going to cling to it though.
And you even had stuff like, which is kind of like on the fringe of it, right? Was like Black Eyed Peas and like coming in, right?
Yeah, and like even like with them, like they were, like they started to kind of, you know,
they started
like
to kind of go towards
in,
the
2000s though, you know. But even them, 1993, they were first on the scene, and like they've been making
noise, they've been making music
like,
forever
for
as
years
well.
though, you know.
But again, this is where it comes into the question. It's like, when did they make their best music? Because like that's where it says like whether 2000s is better versus 90s is better. Because like a lot of the artists were rapping in the 90s, right? Like and so like because you could talk about Jay, right? Because when did Blueprint come out?
Yeah, so that came out, you know, like no wait, so that was out 2001. But I would say this though, before all that even happened, Hard Knock Life from 1998,
100%.
That was like probably like one of his biggest selling albums.
But you got the Blueprint, right? And then you got the one that he did with Alicia Keys. New York State of Mind.
Like that was like the that was like or whatever that was.
Yeah, that was like 09, I think.
Yeah.
2010, somewhere right around there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like that thing was amazing as well. Like there was, and then that's what I'm saying. Like, and Luda was owning stuff at that point in time, right? He had all of his like fried chicken album or whatever it's called and all this shit. Like,
so that's what I'm saying though. You know, it's like I do think that like the biggest hits, you know, just like some of like the hits, like the trendy, like the catchiness, like it did come out of that 2000s era though, you know, because there was
what
like
makes
that formula.
The era the best era? Like, what is your like? This is what makes it the best.
Yeah, I say timeless music and just a whole. You know, I would say like what makes it the best is like, for one, like I said, like the timeless music, and then just being able to put like whole discographies together, you know, just, I mean, like albums together. Like that's what I just think like the 90s had over the 2000s. It was like being able to put whole bodies of work together and just having that experience, having that storytelling, having the consciousness, having like those types of things. And then also like being able to make hits too, because like a lot of them made hits, but of course, again, 2000s had the catchier stuff, but this era right here, just like being able to put out those bodies of work and create timeless music. Like I think that
makes sense
into like the best era.
Now, I think that what makes the era the best is that the music is perfected in a way that it is taken everything from the previous generations and it hasn't lost anything.
Yeah.
And I think the 2000s was the last time that you could say the generation did that without losing what the previous generation had, right?
Yeah.
Because the 2010s, almost any of the old heads will tell you they lost bars.
Yeah.
For the most part, right? They went into Vibe Central and they did the melodic thing and the auto-tune thing and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of that music is super good, Buzz fam. You can go watch our reactions on it. Like we had our heads buried in the sand and we and we didn't like a lot of it, or we didn't even listen to it. We didn't give it a chance really. Right. But like at the same time, like I feel like the 2000s, like you get Lil Wayne's, right? He was barring out. He was making bangers. He had crazy good beats. He was like phenomenal. Same with Kanye West. The ending of Outkast, you can't even argue. Like he's in peak form, right? Eminem, that's when he went absolutely. That's everybody in the world says 2000s Eminem is the best Eminem.
Yeah.
Everybody says that. Like it's just, and like he made some crazy, crazy good music like during that time. And so like same with Jay-Z. Jay-Z was still putting out phenomenal music in the 2000s, right? I don't even remember what the album was that he put out in 06. Was it The Blueprint? I thought it was something else.
No, it was
like
that was like
earlier.
American Gangster or whatever.
American
I think
Gangster with like my young is my hat is real low. It look like a mind reader. So I don't know.
Like the Black Album was 2004.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, that one he put out as well, right? And so you're getting some of these, and then obviously 50 had his run, Nelly had his run, and none of those artists lost something from the previous generation. All of them were making great beats. All of them had great lyricism. All of them were like able to make like a storytelling song, right? Or a song that was like,
you know,
like a banger or a hit or doing like whatever. And so because they were able to do all of it pretty much all the time through like the whole 2000s, it was just absolutely a crazy era for hip hop. And it was the peak. I feel like if you look at the numbers alone, it's like the peak of where like everybody's listening to hip hop, right? Like that was the pinnacle, the peak of like the time period and when everybody was listening to hip hop. And now it's been sliding and we keep seeing that slide, right? Like even in the 2020s and stuff like that, it took Drake and Kendrick to beef to get that thing to peak back up, right? And then it's sliding again and it's sliding hard, right?
Yeah.
And it's because we have such high expectations, I feel like, from the 90s and the 2000s, right? And then we slid for a while, and then we see a Kendrick come out of nowhere, right? Like and like, or a J. Cole,
Clips,
right?
You know,
and Clips, and right? Yeah, I didn't even talk about them, right? Like, and so that's what you're saying. Like, you're getting some of these artists, and now we're seeing like the old heads coming back out, and a lot of them are from the 2000s, trying to revive hip hop right now, you know. And so, because you got Kanye coming back out with music, M still dropping music. T.I. just started dropping more music. 50 back in here beefing with T.I., like doing all this kind of stuff.
Of course, and like everybody from the 90s is, you know, just, I don't know. I just think
most of
like
them passed
90s
away,
are at the
or they're
high
just
table,
real old.
You know, that's what it is like right now, though. You know, it's just like the ones in the 80s, like when the 2000s happened, like the ones in the 80s, like they're at the high table. And so it's just like bound to happen, though, you know, and like at some point, the 2000s, they'll be at the high table and, you know, and I'm so on, so, you know. So it's like the cycle's gonna, you know, it's just gonna keep on going like that. But
So you think because your guys' music is more time, this is gonna be a hot take. I think partially the reason your guys' music, some of it is so timeless, is because of the unfortunate way that people died during it. So like the Bigs and the Tupac wars and stuff made it blow up way more than it probably would have in the same time period, in like the same, although to be fair, if they had lived, they probably would just be stratosphere level as well, right? Because like,
that's right. And it's just like, I think like if they have lived though, you know, then I think like the Jay-Z's probably wouldn't be as big, you know, and some of the other ones wouldn't be as big either though, because it's just like we still have these other people here, and so there wouldn't be voids to fill these other artists and stuff like that though, you know. So that's what I think too. But yeah, man, you know,
it's a crazy kind of thoughts to like to go into it. Now, Buzz fam, you're gonna have to let us know what y'all think about which era is the better era, right? And let us know which albums you think from each era are like the top 5 albums, because we want to go back, if we don't already have them up on the wall and reacted to them, we want to go back and check out the greatest albums of the 90s, the greatest albums of the 2000s, which leads me into what probably our topic for episode 3 of Behind the Bars is going to be, because we already been arguing about who's got album of the year this year.
So we're going to definitely get into that, y'all. You know,
hashtag fall off.
I'll say maybe Casino, maybe.
Yo, Casino.
But we'll talk more about that soon, y'all.
Soon. Buzz fam, we appreciate y'all pulling up to over here on the Patreon. If you guys are new to the channel, obviously welcome. Let us know what other topics you want us to cover behind the bars. But yeah, we came up with this idea mostly because we wanted to start talking about the things that a lot of you guys ask us, like, how'd you guys get started? What'd you guys do? Like, why'd you start the channel? This is why. Because we be back in the backyard. This is a little more scripted, so we can keep it going, right? But most of the time, this is us just drinking, grilling, and bullshitting about music. So we'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.